this is Zach with Virtual Guitar Lessons of Utah. And in today's video lesson, we're going to learn how to read a chord chart. And before we can dive into that, we have to number the fingers of our fretting hand, okay? Starting with your pointer finger, it's going to go 1, 2, 3, and then the fourth is going to be our pinky. And now on some styles of music and on some chord charts, you also have a T for your thumb. Jimi Hendrix is a good example of this. He would actually wrap his thumb around the neck and use it to fret a note of a chord. See, my thumb is actually the one fretting that. That's a more advanced technique, but it is part of this numbering over here. So I thought we'd go ahead and introduce that. Now let's go ahead, let's pull up a chord chart over here. We're going to start with an E major chord. And as you look at this chord chart, I want you to imagine that you're looking at your guitar kind of like this, straight on, okay? The E, furthest to the left, the big E on the bottom of the chart, is going to be your top string E over here. Okay, it's this string. And then the E on the farthest right is going to be your bottom string, the smallest E, that's over here. Okay, so imagine that you're looking at like this. You'll notice that the top line is a little bit darker than the other lines, okay? That represents the nut here of the guitar. And then each line below that, that's horizontal, is going to be a fret. So that first one is going to be the first fret right here, second fret, third fret, fourth fret, and then fifth fret. Okay. You also notice that above each string, some of them have zeros on them. Okay. Now those represent open strings. Okay. When you learn guitar, you start by learning open chords. So all the chords you learn have some open strings that are going to be strummed or picked, or that are resonating in some way. Okay. So on E major, we have the top string is going to be an open string that is played. You have your B string, which is also an open string that's going to be played. And then you have the bottom string, which is an E string again, and that's an open string that's going to be played. And then the last part that we have to dive into is the actual fingering of the chord. Now you have the black dots that represent where your fingers should be placed for this chord. And the numbers inside the black dots tell you which finger you should use in order to finger that chord correctly, to use the right fingers in the right places. There is method to the madness in learning to, in order to use the right finger shapes with your chords. As you move on, as you continue to learn and develop, those shapes are going to make it easier for you to play. And to move into different chords and whatnot. So it is important that you learn to put your fingers in the right places and to use the right fingers on the right frets. So if we look at this E major chord chart, we see that we have our second finger, which is here, is going to be placed on the second fret of the A string. Okay, so that's going to be right here. Our third finger, which is the next one, our ring finger, is going to place also on the second fret, but this time on the D string, so the next one down or lower. Okay. And then the last finger that we have is we're going to place our first finger on the first fret of the G string, which is the next one down from D. Okay. And it creates a shape like this. Okay. Our pinky's not doing anything. Our other three fingers are in the proper spot. And now I can go ahead and I can strum this chord. It sounds good. So if you're new, your chord might not sound as clean and as clear and as nice as that does. And a lot of that is rooted in proper finger technique, okay? There's really two reasons why strings aren't vibrating as they should. And the first one is that you're not getting enough force to press down on the string for it to fret properly, okay? You kind of get like a buzzing, or sometimes it will ring or sometimes it won't, okay? has a lot to do with finger technique. You're going to have to develop some hand strength and some calluses on the tip of your finger in order for you to be able to fret properly on the neck of the guitar. The other reason why chords aren't resonating or ringing like they should is because it's important to keep your fingers on the tip, keep your fingers on their tips. Because if you kind of let them sag down, like if you let this first finger on this chord sag down, it's going to block the B string that's supposed to be open. So kind of might sound pretty good, but that B string is not resonating. And the worse it kind of gets, the messier the chord's going to get. So it's really important to keep your fingers on their tips, to not let your fingers kind of like, sometimes they'll do weird things where they're kind of like if you look at my pointer finger, like it'll not want to stay on its tip in order to try to exert the pressure necessary. It's important to practice really good technique, especially at the start. So I'm going to keep them all on their tips. I'm going to give enough force to press them down, and I'm going to play them. Okay. So let's look at a second chord. Okay. There are chords that you don't strum all of the strings for. Okay. So let's look at this. This is an A major chord. You can say it's a little bit different than our E major chord. And the thing I want you to notice is that on that top E string on the far left, you have an X above that E string. And what that means is that that is a string that is not played on that chord. Okay. All the other strings are played. We have an open A. We have an open bottom E string. We fret 3 strings, the other 3 strings, but that top string is not played. The way you work with that is over time as you learn to play, you kind of will learn to position your hands to naturally mute strings. Okay, like when I play my A, I wrap my thumb around. So when I strum like that, B is just not going to naturally, it's not going to produce any sound because my thumb's there. And that's one way you can go about not playing that string. Also, the way you strum is going to change a little bit. Like I'm going to focus on those bottom 5 strings. Okay. So let's go ahead. Let's figure out this chord. Let's finger it. Let's play it. So for this chord, I'm going to take my first finger and I'm going to place it on the 2nd fret of the D string. I'm going to take my 2nd finger and put it on the 2nd fret of the G string. And then I'm going to take my 3rd finger and put it on the B string in the 2nd fret of the B string. Okay. And then I'm going to play all the notes except for the top string. Okay. Awesome. So those are the basics of reading a chord chart. You should be able to, with that information, you should be able to look at any open chord and have a good idea about how to play it, how to place your fingers properly to play that chord. This is one of those essential things. Chords are an essential part of learning guitar. So you're going to be looking at a lot of chord charts throughout your progress. I referred to chord charts to this day. If you find good tabs or guitar music, it'll have all the chords necessary for that song at the top of the music. And so as you go through the song, you can say, oh, that's a kind of a different chord or maybe a different variation. I can go back to the start of the music and I can see, okay, this is how this chord is properly fingered in this song. Awesome. Well, that's it for today's video lesson, and we'll see you soon.